Hey, I'm Gina. Welcome to the Oh, There's More podcast, a space to get real and go deep. No more just checking the boxes and going through the motions. It's time to live out the beautiful life that God has written for you. On today's episode, we are going to talk about how to acknowledge reality and then process through so that we can find perspective. Well, we are wrapping up an amazing first season of this podcast, which is hard for me to believe. I couldn't decide if I should stop at the end of a month or at a certain number of episodes. And see, it's even small things like this that get to be a measure of what healing has happened in our life. In the past, I would have felt unsettled and bothered by my podcast ending at 19 episodes or going to the middle of a month. But I really didn't get stuck on this for very long. I just knew that this was the last topic that I was going to be sharing for this season. And there will be a little bit of break before I come back and bring some new things to you guys. And it's wonderful to see that things don't have to be just so in every way at all times in my life anymore. There's room for flexibility and change. Control does not rule and reign here any longer. And goodness, I love it. So let's get into this final episode. I think a theme that's been pretty consistent throughout this first season of my podcast is just acknowledging reality so that we can process through whatever is going on. And it's okay. Pause. No, it's not just okay. It's necessary to recognize the emotions and the thoughts that are occupying space in our day-to-day life. It's not just okay. It's necessary. Acknowledging when something is really hard or it's bringing up anger or sadness or whatever that emotion is really detrimental to getting to a healthier place. Don't stuff things down. Don't do the good Christian thing and just jump right to finding the blessing. You aren't tricking your brain and your body by doing that. We have to face it straight on. Get curious about what we're thinking and feeling, and then we can do the next thing to eventually end up at a place of knowing truth and being thankful. And I think one of the ways to do this is just to be really honest and to look at the reality of the situation. Look at the reality of what's going on and then be able to find perspective in it. I think that these two things can coexist, reality and perspective. And I'm even willing to argue that they need to. We can't pretend or ignore or stuff things down. It doesn't make them go away. It doesn't change them just because we aren't willing to face them or admit them. We have to acknowledge the reality that we're facing, what we're feeling, the thoughts that we're having. Acknowledging them simply means that we don't pretend they don't exist, but instead we say, okay, I see you. I'm going to pause and I'm going to pay attention to what's going on right now. God has given us emotions as an indicator. I wouldn't even say that there are good or bad emotions. They are simply something that says, hey, this is an area that we should pay attention to. It's an opportunity to get curious and see why the emotion came up so that we can process through it and replace any lies that we may be believing, or find healing for something that has remained hidden affecting our lives. If it's an emotion that's hard, we can then say, hey, this is an area that maybe God is wanting to highlight so that we can find some truth in it and get healing. Emotions are just something that we get to pay attention to. And I know sometimes there's this stigma that we need to be grateful and positive and not be negative in any way. And I just don't feel like that's something that God Himself is actually asking us to do. If it was, we wouldn't have a Bible filled with lamentations and psalms that are crying out from a place of hurting. So being able to acknowledge the reality of things helps us face them head on so we can process through what's happening. And that is, like I said, a theme here through so many of my episodes. We have to process through the things that we're facing and experiencing. We can't go around them. We can't sidestep grief. Through it is literally the only healthy way. Sure, we can go ahead and choose to ignore these things, and then they're going to come back in bigger ways and in places where we're like, whoa, where is this coming from? This is really unexpected, right? When it's shoved down, it's not that it goes away. It's just going to pop up somewhere else. Like that game that you play, the whack-a-mole, where you hit the one and it pops up somewhere else. And once we're able to stop, to pause, to acknowledge what we're feeling, to acknowledge the truth of the situation, if it's disappointing or it is something that makes you angry or it's something that makes you feel rejected, then we need to acknowledge those things for exactly what they are. If it's something that has brought us deep sadness and we need to grieve through it, then we need to pause and grieve through those things. That's part of the process. It's part of being an emotionally healthy person. And then once we've done that, we can move on to finding the right perspective. And maybe that's something that we can find on our own. I'm a big journaler. I love to write. And sometimes I'll begin my journal entries with how I'm feeling and these not so fun emotions. And as I continue to journal, God will bring different perspectives to mind. I begin to acknowledge the emotions, what I'm feeling, what's going on. And then my eyes are open to move on from the reality of the situation to a place where I can have a better perspective. I'm not saying, oh, those emotions are mine and I'm going to hold on to them. I'm going to live right here in them. I'm going to become a victim to them and a victim to what's going on. No. What I'm saying is the goal is to become more aware of what's going on. To be able to say, this is hard, let me process through it. As I mentioned, you'll see that in the Word of God. If you read through the Psalms, you'll see David kind of going back and forth between these two dichotomies over and over again. Like, Lord, where are you? I feel like you've left me. And then, oh, you're everything. You're my foundation. You're all that I need. It's just part of the process of being human. And maybe we have to spend some time in that place, really pressing in and asking God to help us. Help me, Lord, to see it for what it is. Help me to identify any places where I'm believing a lie about this situation so that I can have your right perspective. There was about a year plus where I was trying to sell the RV that we had lived in. And every once in a while, someone would contact me and they would ask questions. And then even less frequently, people would actually come out and look at it. And then they would say the famous line that you know of if you've ever sold something or went to look at it and were leaving and had no intention of coming back, right? They'd say, okay, we'll get back to you. And in the back of my mind, I just was kind of like, yeah, I won't hear back from them. And I would kind of have to sit with God in those times and be like, goodness, this just feels like another letdown. This feels like it's never going to sell. Like, what is going on here? What is the holdup? Why are we still sitting here with this RV? I need it to be gone. And I really had to turn to God to help get some perspective in those times so that He could remind me, hey, this isn't going to sit here forever. I have a perfect plan. Trust me, it's gonna work out. The timing will be exactly what it needs to be and how it needs to be. I even called, I couldn't tell you how many RV dealerships, even trying to just offload it to them. Like, here, you guys buy it off me for cheap and I'll be done with it. Not a single one of them would take it because it had been renovated for people to live in. The walls were white. I redid the main bedroom, so to speak, and because it was so modified, it was no longer a trailer that somebody would buy for camping, and so they wouldn't take it because it was going to take a really specific buyer. And it turns out there was a perfect buyer for it. They came and got it in a moment, The RV was sold just like that. Done. And in those times of up and down, I had to have God help me get the right perspective. Other times, we may even need to turn to our trusted friends or family or mentors to help us get that perspective, to help process through what we're facing and what's going on, to help us see the situation from a different vantage point. A lot of times we're in the middle of it and all we can see is just up close, right? We're so in the midst of it and it's so personal to us that we can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak. If you were to take a drone and you were to pull that drone back and get an aerial view of you and everything that's around you, you'd be able to have a much bigger picture. And that's often the case with other people around us. They're able to help us do that. They can remember things even that maybe we've forgotten. They can help remind us, hey, this is who you are, and these are the promises that are spoken over your life. You may not see them yet, but continue to stay steadfast. They can help encourage us and point us back to the truth so that we can get the right perspective of things. And I want to just tell you, there's no shame and no condemnation when you're feeling those things, the discouragement or the fear or not being able to trust or whatever the case may be. There is no condemnation or shame. I know we all want to have this really solid, firm foundation and never be shaken, but it happens. And I'm sorry if you've ever had people that have made you feel that way and there hasn't been that support that you needed through those things. Someone to just acknowledge, like, hey, I see you and I see that you're in a hard place. Sometimes that's literally all we need. We just need someone to sit in that place with us for a moment. And that's part of the reality, right? It's part of finding or being honest about the reality of a situation and then moving forward and processing through it. I have my journal that I created that was really designed to help process through different changes, loss, grief. But I'll tell you, that's also a really good way to be able to process through your emotions, to sit with God and say, hey, help me identify what it is that I'm feeling. Help me identify what I'm believing about this emotion or this situation. Help me now, Lord, to have your perspective. Fill me with your truth. Because ultimately, God's truth is the one that we want to move forward with. And in the midst of processing through what the reality is, that is where we're going to be able to find God's perspective if we're willing to just come and sit and face the hard things, to feel the emotions, to address what's going on, to recognize like, oh, every time this incident happens, I feel this certain way. There must be some kind of hurt, trauma, or something else, some kind of root from my past that is causing this same reaction to the same situation or similar situation, right? And when we can go ahead and stop instead of just moving past it, brushing past it like we've always done, when we can stop and we can acknowledge things and process through them, that's where we're going to find the healing. That's where we're going to continue to become a more healthy, healed, whole person emotionally and spiritually. It's been so interesting to me how many times I will do this and I will look at what I think the reality of the situation is. And while some of it will be true, like I feel angry right now, what I believe to be reality oftentimes isn't. And that's why it's so important to go to that next step and to ask God, help me to see this through your eyes. Help me to see this through the lens of truth. Help me to understand things for what they are instead of what my past experiences are telling me that there are. And I hope that through these episodes, whichever ones you've listened to, that you have found some new perspective, some new understanding, and also some new tools to be able to help you to walk through processing your emotions, processing your grief, processing your trauma, so that you can come out on the other side more healthy and healed and whole. Thank you for spending this time with me. It's been an absolute honor. Like I said, I'm still a little bit in awe that an entire season is over, and God has given me so much to just share with you. It's been amazing. I wish we could have been sitting face to face, but either way, thank you for spending this time with me. Don't worry, I'll be back, and I have a feeling I might have some friends with me in the coming seasons. And don't forget, you can connect with me either on my website or social media. If you need just some encouragement or someone to pray with you, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for you. I am so honored to be able to be in a position where I can just be vulnerable and honest about the things that God has shown me and the things that He has personally taken me through, because I know that the healing that He's done in me, He has for you too. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with your people. You can go to my website, ginapeak.com, to find extra resources and info. Until next time.